Hello and welcome back to Needle Lace Made Easy. Michael Dennis here again. In this video I will show you how the coordinate or outline threads are laid. For the purposes of making this video, I've transferred my needle lace pad onto a larger piece of calico that I can hold in an embroidery ring to keep it still for filming. You'll also notice that I've added some letters around this design. These are reference points which I shall use during the course of these videos. So let's get started. The first thing that we need to decide is how much thread we need to go around this design. Ideally we want 2 threads to follow every line on this pattern. I'm going to use a goldy coloured number 12 crochet cotton. So work out how much thread you need to go around the design by roughly laying it around all the lines. Add a bit for luck and then double it. That should now give us plenty of thread to go all the way around this design. Put some sewing cotton into an embroidery needle. I'm using a red thread here, mainly so that you can see it here and you'll be able to see it at the end when we release the lace from the pad. You can use any colour you like. You can either put a knot in the end or over sew the thread on the back of the work. And we need to come up at point A of this design. So we brought our thread through at point A on the design. We now need to put the loop of the doubled coordinate thread over the needle and pull the needle through. And go back down into the same hole or very close to it. Don't pull this thread too tight. If you pull it too tight, you'll pull the coordinate thread through the hole. So just leave it loose-ish for the moment until you get the next stitch in. So come up on the line, on the design line, about 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch away from that first stitch. Pull the thread through, not too tightly, and take your needle back down into the same hole that you've just come out of. Don't pull it too tight at this stage. We can pull them tight after the next stitch. Pull the thread through. Now you can pull it a little bit tighter and go back down into the same hole. Come up on the design line again, about 1/8 or 3 millimeters away. And then back down into the same hole. Now you continue like this all the way around this circle until you come back to here. As you work round this circle, Try to avoid putting any couching stitches where any of these red lines or these black lines here meet this circle. Try to put a stitch either side of those lines if possible. The reason for that will become clear as we progress. As you're making these stitches, if you come up the wrong side of the needle, as I have here, and just transfer the thread over to the other side, and don't make the stitches too tight. But don't make them too loose either. They need to be firm. There are times when you're going to need to run a needle and thread through these stitches at a later stage. That's why you don't want them to be too tight, but they need to be firm enough to hold the coordinate thread in place. I have now worked around the circle, and as you can see, I've avoided putting a stitch on the ends of any of these lines. Now before I put the last stitch in on this part, I need to thread the two coordinate threads through a large-eyed needle. So I've got a large-eyed needle and threaded the two threads through. I now need to push that needle and thread through the original loop of your coordinate thread at point A. Don't put it through the loop of the couching stitches. It needs to go through the loop of the coordinate thread and just pull it through. We can now put our last stitch in around the circle, and we'll put one in across this point immediately after that loop at A. I've now put my last stitch in on the circle, put a stitch immediately on this line coming down here underneath that join, just to hold it all in position. And I'll put a couple of extra stitches now in on this line as well. We're now going to continue couching down our two threads down to I, around this line all the way round to B. I've now completed couching the coordinate threads from A round to B, and I've put a stitch in right at the junction of these three lines. We now need to make what is known as a branch or a junction from B to C. So separate the two coordinate threads, thread one up into your large-eyed needle and pass it under these already couched stitches on the circle and pull that thread through. This then will be laid back from C to B and both threads couched over. The books will tell you that if you're making a junction or a branch, that you would couch the single thread down in one or two places to hold it down on the design line. Our design line is fairly straight and fairly short, so it wouldn't matter, but it is good practice. So we'll just put one stitch over the single thread in the middle here. Putting the single stitches in is more important on wavy or very long lines. We'll now put a stitch in immediately after the junction here. I find it very difficult working this needle pad whilst in a ring. It's much easier to make it in your hand. So bring your needle up, lay your thread back and couch over both threads. And do that all the way back along this line. I've now couched down both threads from C back to B. When you get back to B, pick up the thread that you left behind. You then continue couching both threads around this top petal to D. At D, you make a junction or branch from D to E with a single thread under E and back, and couch both threads back to D. Couch both threads round to F, make another branch at F to G, and work all the way around here until you get to H. Should your couching thread run out while doing the rest of this, just take the couching thread to the back of the work and over sew it and start a new thread at the point where you had to leave off. I have now completed all the couching down of the coordinate right round to H. We now need to concentrate on finishing this off. To do this, thread up one of the threads into the large-eyed needle and take it under the already couched threads at I. And lay this thread back to H. We will then couch over all three threads from H to I. I have now couched over all three threads from H to I. This is the thread that doubled back, and this was the thread that carried on. We now need to couch this thread down along this line for about 3/4 of an inch. As you can see now, I've couched down this thread that didn't lay back here along this line from I to A. The couching stitches are now complete and the surplus thread has been cut off at the back. All we need to do now is cut off the surplus coordinate threads Now that completes our laying of a coordinate. This is the last time we will take any threads through to the back of the needle lace pad. All the filling stitches are worked on the surface. I will show you how to make the filling stitches in the next part of this series. Thank you for watching.